The 40th and Allen Dog Park is a special place in my life. In all my years of going to this dog park, I never realized the importance of the name 40th and Allen. As a responsible Arlingtonian, I decided to find out more. Today, many Arlingtonians don't know the role Arlington played in the Civil War. In an effort to find out more, I took it upon myself to do some research. I figured the best way to tackle this was to go to the forts themselves. This is going to be harder than I thought. It's time I called in some help.
When the Civil War began, both sides figured the war was going to be short. After the Battle of First Bull Run, when the Union Army lost and retreated back to Washington, the Union Army realized they had a problem with Virginia and Confederate soldiers being very close by. Some of the Confederates were as close as Falls Church in September 1861. So the Union Army responded by beginning to build a defensive network of forts all around the city of Washington.
There were a total of 68 forts that were built around the city of Washington, D.C. 22 of them were in what was then known as Alexandria County, now Arlington.
When soldiers enter Arlington from Washington, they sometimes talk about entering the South, or even the Deep South, like Arlington is like Alabama or Mississippi. So these guys from New York or Maine coming into Arlington is entering the South. It's their first experience for many of seeing areas with slaves, with seeing plantations like the Lee family plantation, large plantations like that. So it's just interesting to see what this place was like when the population was only about 1,500 compared to the 200,000 plus it is today.
The Union troops were stationed throughout the county. They had barracks on farms, there were winter camps adjacent to the forts. They created roads and transportation networks. And they really did impact almost all parts of the county, because when you build a fort, you not only have to cut down trees to construct the actual fortifications, but you have to clear a field of fire. And so that meant cutting down much of Arlington County's woods and growth at the time. That meant taking down barns for fuel. That meant taking all the fences down that farmers had built. So the impact to the county was substantial.
In those 68 forts, the perimeter defense forts around the city of Washington, D.C., it was a lot of drilling and a lot of training and a lot of marching and so on. They were at the forts for training purposes before they were deployed to go down to fight the Peninsular Campaign, to go to Richmond, to go west up into Pennsylvania, Gettysburg and Antietam and the other battles.
A lot of times they just had a little bit of downtime, basically. The soldiers who were actually in Arlington, stationed at the forts, had it easy. Baseball was sort of in its infancy at the time of the Civil War, and it was a popular pastime for soldiers. And there was one interesting game that was played between a company of soldiers who was stationed at 40th and Allen and another company that was stationed at Fort Marcy. So I believe the game was played at 40th and Allen. It was something around 46 to 37 or something like that. It was a fairly high-scoring affair.
The first balloon corps, established by Thaddeus S.C. Lowe, who was a scientist, and he came up with this idea that balloons could serve a very important role in surveillance and reconnaissance. He was able actually to go up and see out to Falls Church where Confederate troops were massed, and he could then signal back down on the ground to the soldiers at 40th and Allen, but they were able to then direct fire out to these Confederate troops out there in Falls Church because of the information that he was giving them based on direct observation. Right here in Arlington, the Balloon Corps was a very important part of what happened here and the contribution to the Union effort.
Even though there was no combat in Arlington or Alexandria, they played an important role in keeping Robert E. Lee and the Confederate Army from ever trying to attack Washington through Virginia.
Although no battles were ever fought in Arlington, soldiering was still incredibly hard. Luckily, I was able to track down some journals from soldiers to help me imagine what life was like at the time.
Dear Sister L, my soldiering is now not play, it is work. The last time I wrote, we were in Camp Casey above Washington. Last Saturday afternoon, we received orders to strike tents and be ready to march. We went down through the city, past the Capitol, and across the long bridge, and set our feet on the sacred soil of the Mother of Presidents. We were hungry, but we had nothing to eat. Dee, H, and I each had a blanket. We spread one down and the other to cover us and tried to sleep, but it was so cold that we could not sleep much.
It's been amazing to imagine what life must have been like for the soldiers who served in these forts. As I imagine the lives of those who came before us, I realize that the parks themselves are a wonderful resource in helping bring Arlington's past to life. The county has done a great job in preserving them.
We've tried to do more programming, but we do a lot of summer camps for elementary school age kids, and we do some preservation of the park, some interpretation. And I also work with some of the other county parks that were formerly Civil War sites, like 40th and Allen.
March of 2013, Arlington County sponsored a special event to unveil a historic interpretive project at 40th and Allen. And basically we unveiled 9 historic markers, and there's a replica cannon, and there's a lovely bronze model of the fort that shows what it looked like back during the time of the Civil War. It was exciting because we had different generations of Arlingtonians and visitors come participate. There were over 100 people who came to the event. We had 3 of our elected officials there. We had Civil War reenactors who camped out at the fort for the day. They had their tents, they had their munitions, they were able to talk about what it was like to be a soldier. My favorite part of that day was just seeing so many people come and celebrate the history of Arlington's Civil War forts, and to be able to show the historic markers and the other interpretive exhibits and let people know that it's more than just a park, it really is a part of our history, and the interpretive project will allow people every day to be able to experience some of that history.
I was amazed at the interpretive panels because I'd been following that project and I had been in contact with people in the county that were working on that. And they've really done a great job in terms of installing interpretive markers throughout the site. I think that people who have not much familiarity with Civil War defense in Washington, if they go there, they're going to learn something from these markers. And also just a very impressive set of earthworks that are preserved there still. So it's good to see the county had the vision to continue to preserve that and to put the interpretive resources into it as well.
Learning about Arlington County history is an important way for students to actually go out and experience history outside of the classroom. The forts that exist in Arlington County still mainly Fort C.F. Smith and Fort Ethan Allen, which are our local historic districts, and even Fort Richardson, which is at the Army-Navy Country Club, allow the students to understand Virginia history from a microcosm of what happened in Arlington County. We can teach kids about what life was like at the forts, how the forts related to the protection of Washington, D.C. And with this, we're giving them a first-hand understanding of it instead of just trying to teach it from textbooks.
I think absolutely Arlington can still preserve its history and its architecture and its cultural heritage while changing for the future. It's so important to understand where we've come and to have those physical, tangible reminders of our past as we change and adapt for the future.
As my studies on these forts seemed to be coming to an end, I grew sad. I had learned so much in these past few months and it felt wrong not to share it with the community. I wasn't sure exactly how to do this, so I decided to take my friend on a tour of Arlington's historic Civil War trails. Learning about this has been truly amazing, and I'm grateful you could join me on this journey through Arlington's forts.